Welcome to Valencia. So thank you very much for joining us here in person. We hope the live stream is now working and that those online can also hear and see us. I have to say, the smell of fumes at the front is quite something. So I apologize to all of the opening plenary presenters. You'll be in for surprise as we've stuck this sign to the floor. This event is focused on achieving sustainability goals with Open BIM. So I hope throughout the event we can get the essence of the focus of this event and feel that as an industry and as an industry organization that we are starting to contribute to some of those important goals that we need to achieve. Well, what about the place we're in today? Did you know that Valencia means valor or bravery? Which is a great word, I think, or both of them. And it was also the place where the first book was printed. So I think around 30 years after the printing press was invented, Valencia was actually the city that the first book was printed. So that's quite a cool fact. It ranks as the healthiest city in the world for 2 years running, which means they're obviously doing something right with their lifestyle. So I thought that was fantastic as well. And for those architects in the room, it has the second narrowest building in the world, of only 107 centimeters. And apparently taxes were done based on the width of your property, so it was obviously somebody very frugal. And for anyone that was here on the weekend, you would have heard some popping noise or some fireworks. Of course, that is Las Fallas, the world-famous festival that attracts over 3 million people. So don't be alarmed. I have to say, on some of my runs, I got the jumps, like probably most of you did, with the noises going off. Of course, many of these people will be very familiar to you, and we thank them all very much. So these are some of the people that will be moderating rooms, will be behind the registration desk. And of course, please do go and approach them at various points throughout the event if you need some help. There are things behind the registration desk, as you know, like the login to the Wi-Fi. Of course, any things you need printed out, we can do that for you. I'd like to pay special tribute to Dan Little, who many of you will have interfaced with, I'm sure, at one point, who's worked very hard on this event. And of course, our Spanish chapter of Sergio Muñoz and David Vendrell and Nora as well, who have worked tirelessly for many months to make this event happen. Of course, we have our room moderators and would like to welcome Andre, who's first-time moderator to this event. Hope we can all make him feel very welcome. And of course, some other familiar faces there. And would also like to mention that we have our PCERT booth out there with Sue Chan and Stephen Oxlade. So please go and meet them. On the website, you'll notice we have a week at a glance. So please take a look at the way we've structured the event. This is the opening plenary. We followed by the evening welcome drinks and fellows. So once we exit out of this room, take a right and up the stairs. Everybody is welcome to join. Please do join us tonight for that. Again, it is an open invite. We, of course, run our domain sessions throughout the event for 2 days. We have workshops, masterclasses, our national conference, and for those that are coming, the summit dinner, which is actually down by the marina. So we're looking forward to a fantastic evening there as well, followed by our closing plenary on Friday. Today's structure looks a bit like this. We'll be doing our opening keynote. Sorry that we're a little late starting. I'm told that's the custom here, so we have to appreciate that. And then we'll be breaking around 11, maybe a little bit past, back into the foyer near the sponsor booth. So please do head out that way after that. We have 3 other sessions, the Golden Thread, YIFC, and Next Gen Thinking, and we'll be closing around 5:45. But of course, don't forget we have our customary photo, so don't miss out on being on that one. We'll come back up to this stage and organize our photographer to make sure we capture that. Please do download the Ring Central app. It was called Hopin, many of you remember, but it's now Ring Central, so please download it from the App Store. And if you're unsure about how to locate the email, it is from buildingSMART International at no reply. It's pretty straightforward. Once you've logged in, you'll get access to your own profile and you'll be able to interact with people and learn a bit more about the event. I'd like to thank our sponsors. Really, without this, we wouldn't actually be able to make these events happen. I can tell you running an industry not-for-profit summit is challenging, but without our sponsors, we wouldn't be able to do this. So we'd really like to thank Autodesk and LeapThought in particular for their support as platinum sponsors. And we'll be hearing from them in this session shortly. Our gold sponsors, you'll see their booths out there as well. I'd like to thank all of those organizations. It's great that we've got a a variety of organizations supporting, so I'd like to thank those organizations too. Our cocktail sponsor and our coffee sponsor, thank you to those, and our event sponsors as well. So please appreciate the contributions that they've also helped to make. You may have seen this sign around, but I think this is quite important to a lot of us as well, that Valencia was the winner of the 2024 European Green Capital. And this building in particular has a 90% plastic reduction in this building. You'll notice paper cups and things like that, which I think is really good to see. And for the third summit in a row, we'll be doing food collection. So any food that we don't eat will be reused, which I think is really good news. There's a bit of an analysis of the split of percentage. So 12% of this summit coming from Spain. And I think Japan, for maybe the 5th or 6th summit in a row, is the second country in terms of attendance there. Actually, apologies, I think China should also be on there because they're third. I'm not sure why that graph was should say that. Then on Saturday, I pulled the database of registrations, and I thought it might be interesting to actually look at the breadth of the audience here and the industries and types of organizations that you come from. So actually, it's the AEC firms and consultants, engineering consultants, make up quite a large proportion of this summit, which is the first time that that group has actually really gone ahead of other areas. So we're followed by owner-operators and clients at 16%, software vendors and standards body as well, which includes our chapters. So, but it's a really nice mix of representation of nearly 600 people registered across the board with varying different contributions. So I think that's really good. And what's new in this one? Well, again, it's not new, but a continued focus on this topic of sustainability throughout the event, you'll notice, particularly with this venue in this event. We have a real focus on education. You'll be hearing from Céline Bent shortly around the importance of education and how we're providing an opportunity for people to get their qualifications at this summit. There's a hands-on area as well. So if you would like to go and try out some things, go and take some quizzes and learn a bit more about where your competency is. We have an area for that as well out in the sponsor area. And we took on some feedback from last event about the summit dinner. So we'll be doing the fellows tonight rather than at the summit dinner. So looking forward to seeing how that works out. We also have the workshop, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a second, but many of you will remember in Rome, we ran that open BIM game. And so we've continued to work with organizations on that front to actually deliver hands-on learning within a workshop environment. Of course, our awards program as well, we'll be delighted to mention that in a second. And there are actually new chapters here, which I won't steal the thunder from our chair, but we have also new chapters here as well, which is great that we continue to add to that group of national body. So we'll be hearing a little later from the Feynman team, but many of you may be aware this project connecting an immersive tunnel connecting Denmark and Germany is a huge project. I think it's the biggest project in Europe. And Feynman came to us with a challenge to say, actually, we enjoyed Rome so much. Can we work with you, buildingSMART International and the Danish chapter, to support how we can implement open BIM workflows within our daily practice? And how can we better define our information exchange requirements by using things like IDS? How do we take advantage of the buildingSMART data dictionary? How do we make IFC really work within the project? So we've actually got a workshop here with that team, and you'll see the contractor organizations here. The people that are actually working to deliver this project are here as well at the event. We also have some software organizations that you see there supporting this. So they'll be working in their software with our data, with their data, sorry, from the project, and actually working about how we can improve the methodology for working within that. So that's fantastic. And Lars and Marina will be joining us on stage a little later today to talk a bit about what their aspirations are around that. And I have a favor to ask, actually. So at buildingSMART International, we did a little exercise around what your preferences were. This is quite a famous quadrant, essentially. And your preference typically are in one box or another. And sometimes you're in the sort of cool blue, which is sort of analytical. Sometimes you might be quite direct in the fiery red. And we all have a sort of preference. You might be firmly in one box, but you might be across a couple. I do have an idea that we should push ourselves out of our comfort zone. So if you see someone that you don't know, please go and introduce yourself. You you never know, you might create a new connection. I think we can all sort of think about some lasting relationships that we've had, probably came across a coffee chat or something like that. And that would be my recommendation, that you push yourself out of your comfort zone at the Building Smart Summit. And I'll be checking in at the closing plenary to see if anyone's actually done that. I'd also like to announce that the Building Smart Awards program is open. So please do check our website and submit your Open BIM project for the next summit. And on that, next we will be in Marrakesh in Morocco, for anyone that's not been. It's quite an amazing place. And we'll be running from the 1st to 3rd of October. It'll actually be our first African summit, so we hope you can support that initiative. But before we even talk about Marrakesh, we have to focus on Valencia, and I would like to pay special credit to Sergio Muñoz, who's been an absolute wonderful person to work with on this summit. And Sergio, with that, I'd like to welcome the chair of the Spanish chapter, Sergio Muñoz.
Thank you. So thank you, Aidan. Thank you, everybody, for coming to Valencia, for coming to my city. So, okay, so waiting for my presentation. Okay, thank you. So I'm Sergio Muñoz, Operations Director of buildingSMART Spain. So usually many presentations are focused on answer to big questions. So what and how. But they forgot, from my point of view, the most important to answer. So it's just why. So I remember, in fact, I remember when we organized another event in Barcelona, another summit in 2017. So maybe some of you remember too. So you know that some of these people are not already with us. Others, we are older than in that photos. So many of you are new, really, in this International Forensic Club. So, and I remember that my friend Rob Rove from the Netherlands, when we organized it, asked me, hi Rob, he asked me, so why do you want to organize an event, so a summit? Because it takes a lot of work, a lot of risk. So, but for me, it was really clear why to do it. So to organize that summit 7 years ago, it gave us, to our chapter and to the Open BIM standards in Spain, it gave us visibility, positioning, and added value. So I think it was really important for our chapter to grow as chapter. We had only 5 years old in that moment, so it was really an important milestone for us. So, okay, but we did it 7 years ago. Why to did it again 7 years later? So this year, 2024 is an important date for us in Spain. So the national government has created BIM mandate, making BIM mandatory with a progressive maturity levels. So there are several dates, and the information requirements are increasing in maturity in each date. So, but the first date is the 1st April of 2024, just in a couple of weeks. So, but for us, it's not only a BIM mandate. In fact, it's an open BIM mandate, because the standards are introduced in these information requirements. How are introduced? So I've told you that there are different maturity levels defined. And for example, in the second maturity level, intermediate level that we know, so the workflow must be based on ISO 19650. To delivery and exchange BIM models must be always in every level in IFC. But for example, since the advanced level, all the exchange of issues must be based on BCF. So really, it's an open BIM mandate, and it's really important for us. So, but why the Spanish government has done this open BIM mandate? So there are two main reasons. And today we are going to have a session focusing why IFC. But these are the reasons for the Spanish government. So first one, neutrality. So from a technological point of view, public government must be really neutral. But the second one is to give independence to all the SMEs. In Spain, the 98% of the companies of the construction sector are SMEs. So these small companies must decide in each moment, must be free to decide exactly which tools they can use. Okay, so, but why to organize, again, this summit? So in this case, our goals are mainly two. So the first is share our best practices. So in fact, we have that national conference, but it's not in Spanish, and it's not thought only for Spanish attendees. So please, everybody is interested to know exactly how we are implementing Open BIM standards in our projects. You can attend the national conference, so it will be in English. So, but to share our best practices, but to learn from your best practices. So I think that's the good point of the community. And the second thing is to reduce the gap. So we consider that there are some companies, mainly big companies, with a high maturity level, but many small companies with a low maturity level. So any kind of initiative to promote, to share the knowledge, so like the entry level, that is going to be explained later, for example. So we consider that really important to spread the knowledge about Open BIM. But why in Valencia? So I think that we have a really nice city with a nice weather and nice food, a great venue. It's a Norman Foster designed building. So, and this time we have Festival of Las Fallas. So I know you are here for working, but I'm sure that you will remember this summit if you take some time to enjoy Las Fallas. So, as Aidan told, this has been a joint venture between buildingSMART International and buildingSMART Spain. So we have been preparing many surprises. So one of the surprises is Marina. Marina is below, is there. Hi, Marina. So you will see the work of Marina there. She will be creating really nice sketches with the ideas of the different presentations. So I think that it's a good opportunity to put in one image many ideas. So thanks, Marina, for coming. But there are, okay, thanks for your work. So, but there are other many surprises. So keep until Friday to discover all of them. So I want to just to give, to say thank you to the Spanish team. It's Nora and David, but it's to another David Barco and Maria. So if you need something from the local chapter or to know something about how to go to any place in the city or something, please ask all of us. Of course, thanks to all the sponsors. So it was not possible without them. So I have to say thank you to all of them, but mainly to those sponsors that come from the Spanish chapter. So I know that it's a big effort to be a sponsor here. But if anybody is asking me yet exactly why to organize this event, so why not? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sergio. So exactly, why not? So certainly plenty of surprises. Thank you again to the work being done there. So we look forward to the finished production. With that, I'd like to hand over to Ian Howell, who's the chair of buildingSMART International. Probably needs no introduction, but Ian, the floor is yours.
Thank you. buildingSMART International is an amazing community, and it's all of you who contribute and participate not only at these very large, exciting events, but of course in your local chapters, in working groups, on committees, in your own companies, to really put the message of Open BIM and open standards into the industry in your various countries. We have added Since our last summit, 3 new chapters. Serbia made an application and the board approved that in Norway after the summit had closed. We had a board meeting on the Friday. And yesterday we had applications where we had representatives from Iceland and from Kazakhstan present to the board and explain how they had established themselves in country, that they had relationships with industry and academia and government, and really had embraced this idea of taking open standards to drive extra BIM adoption in their countries. So please join me in welcoming Serbia, Iceland, and Kazakhstan. Now, one could argue on that map that the most important chapter today is Spain, our hosts. Thank you very much, Sergio, and all of the people who have helped you organize us today. So we've heard about our sponsors, but I wanted to call out LeapThought, because LeapThought are our newest strategic member. At the highest level of supporting buildingSMART, we have a number of different companies listed here who are our strategic partners. And LeapThought joined us yesterday at our strategic advisory board. We spent the afternoon where it's a chance for the buildingSMART board and the buildingSMART leadership team to listen to our strategic partners to say, what are you hearing? What's important for you? What direction are you going in terms of serving this industry? And how can we collaborate and be aligned on some of those important initiatives? You know, workforce development, professional certification is an example. Certainly, we started to talk about some of the direction of IFC5, and you see on the agenda for later today, we're talking about a future vision in terms of next generation to take advantage of new technology. So it's very important working with these partners, and now LeapThought being one of the advisory board members. We also have new buildingSMART International members, again, since the last summit. This is largely through the work of chapters and the leadership team working with companies and bringing them into the fold to increase our membership. And of course, increasing our membership increases our revenues so that we can do more work and do more work more quickly. So it's great to welcome these additional members. They all see that there is a benefit in joining our community. What they probably don't know when they join and pay their membership fee is that's just the start of all the hard work, the time, the effort, the contribution, which you all certainly understand that we only work because of all of the effort that we put in and contribute. Certainly we do that because we're helping steer the direction with our domain roadmaps. We're giving input to the strategic roadmap. We really are influencing the direction of how our buildingSMART standards and services are developing. And why do we do that? Sometimes it's to help our companies, sometimes it's to help our clients, but it really is so that we have the best possible understanding of open standards and open BIM, that we can take advantage of the many benefits. And it really is about showing leadership. It's people who, like you all, are stepping up to lead our industry to a better place. And thank you for the passion you have for that mission. So you may or may not remember, those of you who were at the last summit, I talked for the first time about the evolution of buildingSMART International. The fact that buildingSMART International 1.0, as I call it, was really a lot about volunteer organizations, everyone doing the best they could, but it was a little chaotic, but we did achieve a lot of work as a volunteer community. buildingSMART 2.0 was when we brought some professionalization. We had our first CEO, Richard Petrie. We built a leadership team, many of whom you're meeting today. Aidan, Richard, Céline, Leon, as representative of the work we did to put in a BSI process, to put in some formalization, some professionalization, and to increase the quality of our work and the organization. And then buildingSMART 3.0 was really a transition that we started about a year ago. A year and a half ago, it was when we had Clive join us as our new CEO. And it was really time to sort of relook at fundamental principles, reinvent ourselves, and say, how can we be even more professional? And how can we support the standards and services? Because it was no longer just about creating IFC. It was about, what about the data dictionary, the validation service? How do all of these things work together? What about the innovation for information delivery specifications? So a big transition. We're not through that transition yet. We're still working on that, particularly this year. So I know change is sometimes difficult, but change is important because it sets us up for future growth and future success. And we're navigating through some of those changes now. So there's a little bit of a change to the charter of domains. There's going to be perhaps some more responsibility that we're going to ask the chapters to contribute against a set of guidelines. So please expect those things and understand that we are all working together to change for the better. Now, someone who has seen all of those things, building smart 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0, is Russo. Russo was here yesterday at our board meeting. Unfortunately, he had to fly home last night because his 93-year-old mum passed away, so very sad. She had been ill, so not a surprise, but always very sad. So we were wanting to thank Russo and acknowledge him because he let the board know yesterday that he would not be standing for re-election. He's retiring as a professor. He has retired from being president of the German chapter, and he will be stepping down from the board in June. He will not be in Hong Kong. So this was the event that we were all going to celebrate Russo's amazing contribution, both to building probably our strongest chapter in Germany, and all of the work that he's done as a very, very strong leader for Building Smart International. So in his absence, if we could do an appreciation for Russo. And obviously we wish him and his family well with what they're going through. Now, the person who's going to lead us through this transition and into the next phase of Building Smart International is Clive. So I'll hand back to Aidan and we'll get Clive to come up and tell you how we're going to achieve that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Sorry, Aidan's decided not to come up here. And Sergio, I appreciate you giving us these with the lights up here. I actually can't see a damn thing now, so I probably won't wear them the whole presentation. But look, it's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining us today and making this summit, as with all our summits, what they are. So we've actually had quite a good introduction already in terms of why we're here gathered today and some of the changes, the evolution that we're going through. So what I'll try and do is just maybe reinforce some of those messages. Sergio started with the why. I'm going to do the same. I'm going to talk about why we're in this room and what problems we're trying to solve. I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing. So that's where the open bin workflow comes in. Some changes in how we're doing it, which ties back into what Ian was just talking about, and then some of the next steps. So hopefully not too much repetition, but hopefully if there are issues that we raise, at a light touch session now, you can catch up with myself, catch up with others during the week, and we get into it in a bit more detail. So just trying to set up some of those deeper conversations. But before I get into that, just to echo really some of those thank yous, partly to all of the organizers, Sergio and the team, all of my staff who've made this possible, but actually also to all of those sponsors. And I would say, there are lots of sponsors booths outside. They're not just outside this door. They stretch all the way along the corridor there. And there's some really interesting stuff on those booths. So, please make the most of the opportunity to talk to these sponsors and understand the state of the art in some of these technologies. But could you please just show your appreciation for making this possible? Thank you. And then also, to yourselves, because these aren't just conferences where you turn up and sit and listen. These are interactive conferences. So actually, all of you have a voice. All of you need to make that voice heard. And the next 2 days after today are very much the working part of the conference. So, I'm hugely grateful to all of you for making the time, the commitment to be here, and actually for engaging throughout these conferences. So, I salute you. I thank you very, very much for making these the success that they are. So I appreciate it. Thank you. You can give yourselves a round of applause. That's fine. Thank you. Okay, so why we're here. Digitalization, we are not here just to produce standards for their own sake. We are here because we're trying to fix some fundamental challenges with the construction sector. And it's great, we're in a city with some amazing architecture. All around us, we're surrounded by infrastructure and buildings. It affects every aspect of our lives. But we all know there's two really big challenges that this sector has. It costs too much, productivity is not as good as it should be. So the commercial, economic resources it takes to create this environment, there's too much going into it. And environmentally, 39% of the world's CO2 emissions come from our industry. So the challenge that we're all facing, what we're trying to deal with is how do you do more with less? More buildings, better buildings, for less money and for less environmental impact. So when we think about the role of building smart, it has to be in that context that we're solving those fundamental business and actually challenges that affect the whole of human race, to be honest. So the role of our community, why we're here, is we're the bottom layer in this pyramid, if you think about it in terms of a system. So the Building Smart community comes together, it creates the bottom layer, which is those open standards, those open services. If you get that right, it enables the next level of the pyramid, and that's where data starts flowing. It's where interoperability comes in. So if we're interoperable, we're stitching together information from multiple sources, different software vendors, different designers, different organizations through the life cycle of a facility. And suddenly that means we can take better decisions, which moves us up another level. Because if you can get a better decision based on much richer information across the whole life cycle of a building, you can optimize around your carbon content, around time, around cost. You can make better decisions to avoid rework and poor quality. So suddenly you're getting a better product. But also, if that information comes together in a machine interpretable form, we can start to apply some of these really clever modern technologies to automate our processes as well. So actually, we're getting a double effect here. You're getting better decisions, but you're also getting the efficiencies from automation as well. And that all drives into the very top level here, where you get your business outcomes. So you get more sustainability, more productivity, more profitability as well, because that's one of the drivers. So we're here to make this whole system work. That's the why we exist. And I hope you see that captured in our vision, our mission, our purpose. And I always like the middle one here, which is our vision, because it's nice and snappy, but it says it's about seamless exchange. So that's great. That's the interoperability, but also of trusted information. And that word trust is really important as well, particularly if we unlock some of the potential of machine learning tools, etc. Trust is a huge part of what we do as well. So that's the why. What are we doing? And why do we have so many logos? I often get that. I'm not going to talk about all these logos, but I want to focus in on the middle bit of this, which is what you might describe as the core open BIM workflow. Céline and others will talk about some of the stuff that goes around this with professional certification and the like, but let's just focus on the workflow. So it starts, as always, with a business need. What are you trying to achieve as an organization through this? So you can use the use case management service there to plug into some best practice. It allows you to shortcut, actually, some of the effort to establish that business need. That then flows into defining your information exchange requirements. You can use the information delivery specification standard to help you do that, but you can also then link in to the buildingSMART data dictionary service to then access individual data dictionaries to effectively extend the contents of the IDS and using some high quality, best practice, national, local, domain-based data dictionaries as well. Once we've established our requirements, we can then move on to actually communicating, and that's where the IFC flagship standard comes in. That's your communication protocol. But again, it ties back into the data dictionary to give you that extension back into those high-quality dictionaries that define your local codes and needs. And we can also use the validation service. So before you then pass that IFC file on to the next person in the information chain, you can upload it to the validation service, and you can check, is this actually a valid IFC file against the schema? Are there any errors in how it's exporting? And if there are, you can then go and fix those. So suddenly we've got some quality control coming in here to improve that exchange process. Then we have the human feedback loop, if you will, and it's more than just that. It does a lot more than just the human element. But this is essentially where you can use the BIM collaboration format to say, actually, designer to designer. Let's go and look at this door, down this corridor from this position in the model, so you both know you're talking about the same thing, and you can have that design conversation. So actually, I need to adjust this for these reasons. So that's sort of meeting your design intent, the contents of these models. And then finally, when you've done all of that and you're happy, you can publish it. And that's where the Open CDE comes in. So there's APIs within that allow you to easily publish this information for others to use. So that's essentially the core workflow. And a few of those things have changed since the last one of these summits. So first of all, IDS, it was there as a candidate standard this time, or at the last one of these conferences. We have now got that into the voting mechanism to become a final standard, a buildingSMART standard. The voting closes at the end of May. It's a very small change from actually the candidate standard that many of you are using into this final standard. So it's fantastic that we're on the last stages of getting that published. It's already in widespread use, which is brilliant, and I hope many more people will adopt it. IFC, I think probably a lot of you know already that ISO approved the next iteration, IFC 4.3, back in January this year. And this is a huge leap forward. It's a leap forward in terms of the content of the IFC and the number of domains and sectors that it covers, but also in terms of the quality. This is a really good standard, and the fact that we have got it through the ISO process is testament to that. Loads of people in this room have contributed to that, and I thank you very, very much for all of your work to do that. It's fantastic that we've got to this stage. And also, we're now translating that. I was waiting. We had a bet running as to when that was going to happen. I thought the E was going to go first, but anyway, we'll get there. So now as we've got the IFC standard fixed, we need to translate that into different languages. And actually, it's fantastic to be able to call out the Spanish team here, because not only have they put on this conference, they've actually also been translating IFC into the Spanish language faster than any other chapter we have. So they're up to 44% now, translated and approved. I'll call out the Dutch as well, because our colleagues from the Netherlands are at 32%, so you might still catch up. But actually, we've got a huge effort going along across many, many chapters now to translate that to make it more usable in national languages. So, Sergio, well done. You're in the lead, as always. And then Open CDE. The back end of last year, we published the next iteration, well, the next API within this, the Documents API. So that's now a final standard as well within the buildingSMART system. So this exists today. This is not some vision of the future. All of this is here today. You can use it today. Please do so. Those standards across the bottom now are really stable and mature and available to use. The services across the top, particularly the data dictionary and the validation service, they exist, and we want to expand them and strengthen and grow them. But all of this is here today. So please, please use it. So, brings me on to how we work. And there have been a few changes, and really based around the introduction of the strategic projects that Ian referenced earlier. So I will talk you through just how the working model operates, the operating model within buildingSMART International these days with strategic projects in there. And it starts with requirements, and that's where you folks come in, because you represent the members, our community. You set the requirements. We don't set them, you set them. What we do is we capture those business requirements in a hierarchy of roadmaps. So we have the strategic roadmap you've seen before. I'll show you again in a moment, and it's on the website. And we have the technical and compliance roadmaps, which have a little more detail. And then we have 10 domain roadmaps, which then look at the detail within each individual industry sector of how this all comes together. So we capture it, it's iterative, you shape those requirements. We then move into what I call the sort of common global foundational standards. So this is things like the IFC, like actually the data dictionary service itself. These are things that support every domain, every chapter around the world equally. So they are now being developed under these strategic projects. So under Leon and Céline's leadership, because we have to get products there which work for every single domain. So we need sponsorship and contributions. We're a non-profit. We don't have the resources to actually develop these ourselves. So we need contributions. Sometimes that's contributions in kind from expertise, particularly as we look at next generation of IFC. There's some great expertise that we draw on from this community. But otherwise, actually, it is sponsorship and funding in exactly the same way as all projects have always worked within the buildingSMART organization. So we need your help to develop these. but that's where they're done. So it's quick, efficient, focused, high quality if we can do it under these strategic projects. But once we develop that core common global standard or service, we then need to actually think about how you localize that to work better in an individual country, in an individual domain. And this is where the domain projects come in, but also the compliance program within our individual chapters. So again, there's a contribution component here where expertise and resourcing comes in from our community to make these projects happen. But that's where the last of 20% or whatever it might be of a standard or a service is done. And I'll go through a couple of examples in a second. And then the role of the buildingSMART International Office moves back a little bit at that stage into coordinating the domains and actually providing maintenance and support for those standards and services. And then finally, we move into actually using these. And then this is where the benefit comes back in. So you've started on the left because you have a user need. On the right-hand side is where you get the benefit. And this is individual companies adopting these standards, adopting these services, using that workflow, and then getting the benefits, getting that return on investment. And again, my organization has a role to support and enable that. And we've introduced the Accelerator program to work with a few clients around the world to actually help people adopt that whole workflow. And in doing so, we document how they're doing that. We're capturing the best practice, and then we can share that best practice with everyone else to make all of your journeys that much easier when you're adopting these standards and services. So the Accelerator program is there to generate that best practice and support that adoption. So that's how it works. And if I think of a couple of examples, so next generation of IFC, IFC 5, requirements are defined by all of you on the left-hand side here. They're captured through the roadmaps and actually through the more detailed working groups that sit under it. The effort to control the development of IFC 5 is a strategic project under Leon's leadership, again, with contributions from many people in this audience, financially and in terms of skills. Then the translation of that next generation of IFC would be done by the chapters, just as the chapters are doing it now in the third column. And then it'll be up to you to adopt and use this in your organizations. Another example, the data dictionary. So the requirement for a data dictionary is on the left-hand side. On the back of that, we have built and we are continuing to evolve the data dictionary service. We have Arta somewhere in the audience here, who's our product manager for that. But actually the content, the important stuff with the data dictionary happens here, where we have domains and chapters providing national, sector-based dictionaries to go in that service, which then allows the companies on the right-hand side to access that and help you actually use these workflows in reality. And it's the same even for training, and Céline will talk about PCERT in a minute. The core PCERT curriculum that's common across the world, the strategic project, but actually the smart stuff that then adapts that for use within individual countries, the profiles, if you will, nationally, happens on the third column there. So people can then get trained and certified. So that's fundamentally the operating model. I hope that makes sense. The strategic project second column is new here, but that's designed to focus on those common global standards and services which support everyone equally. And I hope you agree that makes a bit of sense. Any questions, please do catch me afterwards. I'm happy to talk about this. So finally, what next? To remind people of what's in the roadmap, we think about life in three phases. We think about the standards and services that we already have, and this is slightly backward looking, but these are still in use today. And we have a role as buildingSMART to help people still adopt and make use of these existing standards and services. The phase we're in at the moment is that phase of improvement. So that's where we're bolting on the data dictionaries, the validation service, IFC 4.3. We're improving that workflow all the time and strengthening it. That's the phase we're in at the moment in the middle. But we're also now planning the next phase, which is that future generation, which actually then moves us into IFC 5, fundamentally different architectures, distributed data formats rather than a single big central file, etc. So we operate in all three phases at the same time, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. In terms of progress, this is pretty much locked down now. IFC, UCM, IDS, that's done. These have a degree of capability already. Professional certification exists in Foundation, it exists in Practitioner in some areas, but we're strengthening it. Same with the data dictionary and the validation service. They're there today, you can use them today, but we want to grow them and make them more capable. And then these are a big focus effort for the future. So we need to do more work on software certification to really strengthen how we do that as a community, leading into actually a certification ecosystem and the next generation of IFC as well. So all of those bricks in those bubbles there are areas where we have strategic projects focused, because that's where we can actually make a big contribution to the collective effort across this whole community. So we have these 9 strategic projects, which fitted in that second column earlier. They tie into where the bricks were on the last slide. And these are the areas where we need your support. We need income, funding to allow us to do these. And actually, we need you to help us define the requirements and those contributions in kind in some cases as well. And they split into 3 areas. So on the left-hand side, you've got the 3 services. So you've got your validation service, data dictionary, and software certification service, where we want to either strengthen them or build them. You've then got 2 standards. There's the next 2 there. So you've got IFC 4.4, which is introducing tunnels into the existing schema, fundamentally, a few other things, but that's mainly it. And then IFC 5, which is the next generation. And then on the right-hand side, you've got 4 more, which are focused on services around education and certification. So professional certification to train individuals, project and enterprise certification, which is about project teams and organizations, the OpenBIM game. We talked about that earlier. That's a great way of training collective teams. It's far more engaging in some ways than classroom training. So actually, we'd love to have that in our toolkit. And then something around capturing the return on investment to help people with your investment decisions to invest in OpenBIM. We can add more to this if there's demand from industry. So I'd encourage all of you, please help us with these, but tell us if you want to see other things up on those roadmaps and on this slide. This is your choice. So, to finish, if we want to make this work, what can you all do? What can I do? What can we do collectively? So first of all, if there's representatives of government in the audience, probably the single most powerful thing you can do is put that word open inside your mandates. Mandate open standards. And I'm seeing countries around the world, we'll hear about Singapore later. I was in Dubai a couple of weeks ago where they have a mandate. Finland last year, I know Japan, we just talked about Spain, Portugal, lots of these countries are pushing this way, which is fantastic. But please, you can make a huge difference with that leadership here. And likewise, asset owners. Again, if you provide that clarity through your supply chain by actually mandating those open requirements, providing that certainty about how you're going to operate this project or this enterprise, it is super helpful for us. To the architect, engineer, construction firms, facility managers in the audience, the consultants, again, talk to your asset owners about actually how you define these open requirements through the entire ecosystem. Again, it gives you that certainty. So have that conversation and ask for that clarity. Train your workforce in how to actually then operate in this system. Use PCERT, use these tools that are available to get ready for this, and start using that workflow and get familiar with it. Product manufacturers, again, there's a consistency piece here. You make sure your product data templates are consistent with the way we're structuring information through the data dictionaries and the like. That makes a huge difference. Vendors, I'm actually preaching to the choir, I think, here, because you wouldn't be in this room if you weren't already bought into this. But, please keep adopting all of these tools and services in your software tools. And thank you for doing so already. And then for everyone, if you're not already a member, please join up, because that helps you contribute to those requirements, and we respond to those requirements. We need your support to sponsor projects, whether they're strategic or within the domains. That's always the way it's been. We can't operate without that financial support. So please, that allows us to go faster and deliver what you need. And then make the most of it and get those benefits and shout about it. And if there's a feedback loop to say, that's great, I've got to hear, I want to go further, feed that back into the requirements. This is now real, it's live, and you can use it. So please, make the most of it and shout about it. So with that, thank you so much for being here this week. Please make your voices heard all week. As I always say, it's your conference and your chance to influence and affect how we approach the future. And if you've got follow-up questions, contact emails up there, QR codes take you to strategic projects and membership, and talk to everyone in the team here this week. But I look forward to seeing you over the next few days. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Clive. And yep, so a lot of talk around education, and you saw some of the components on the strategic projects, and also within the conference theme. So with that, we're going to welcome our next speaker, which is Céline Bent, Compliance Director of buildingSMART International. Céline, over to you.
Imagine that buildingSMART builds a house, and this house could be located anywhere in the world. The house has been crafted by members of this community, of course, with the use of OpenBIM, and it has been built for individuals who are working or are aspiring to work in the built asset industry. You may recognize this house as the home of Pat and Matt, in the Netherlands also known as Buurman and Buurman. These are the two main characters of an animated series that originates from the Czech Republic. And these two good friends, they love to build things together and to solve problems. We draw parallels between the house of Pat and Matt and buildingSMART professional certification. The house is still under construction, but I can already show you around. The entrance door is always open to everyone. Metaphorically speaking, entry-level training is available freely online, and it's simple and straightforward, and you can access it already through this link. Not immediately, but feel free to test it out after this presentation. The ground level is already complete, and it leads us straight into the living room, which is filled with books. And this room is symbolic for our foundation level training. And this is an introduction to open standards and ISO 19650 concepts, and all the opportunities that collaboration in an open BIM environment bring. After having done the foundation training, participants, they can do an exam and become buildingSMART qualified. At this summit, you all have the special opportunity to take this foundation exam. And if you haven't registered already, please visit our PCERT booth that's located in the exhibition area, so you can secure one of these spots. There are only 50 seats left, so hurry up. Usually, the foundation exam is follows a very extensive multi-day training. Although this is mandatory, we believe that as you are all members of this community, already have sufficient knowledge to take this exam already. But if you feel like you can use a little refresher, or you just want to get an overview of all the topics that are taught in the foundation training, there's the opportunity to join a crash course tomorrow morning, led by the leader of professional certification himself, Mark Baldwin. And you may wonder, why do I need a certificate for knowledge that I already possess? Well, here's the thing. The foundation certificate is a prerequisite for higher levels of training and certification that may be of your interest. Just like in the home of Pat and Matt, it's like taking the stairs, and it enables you to advance to higher levels. So let's do that. Be careful, because it's still under construction. At the next level, we find 2 rooms. And one of them is an office. And the office has been decorated already, as you can see, but it's still missing a computer. This space is symbolic for our management level training. And this focuses on strategic and organizational insights for managers who are leading digitally empowered projects. It doesn't go that much into technical detail. That happens in the adjacent room. And the adjacent room is a workshop. And it symbolizes our practitioner level of training and certification. And this training really enhances the open BIM skills at an operational level. It's already available in Italy, in Austria, and in Germany. And we're working really hard to make this available internationally. There are plans to turn the attic into an official space, the highest level of professional certification, called expert. And here you have to first complete the foundation and the management or practitioner training to achieve this highest level. As I said, the higher levels are still under construction, and in order to ensure quality and timely completion, we've made this a strategic project. And we're looking for financial sponsors that can contribute to this. So they're not available yet across the world, but we wanted to give you the opportunity to get an idea of what kind of questions you may be able to answer after completion of any of these higher levels of training. And therefore, we have prepared a Kahoot challenge for you with questions that mirror exam questions that could be asked in these higher levels of certification. Those Kahoot challenges are on workstations that you can find in the exhibition area. And while you're there, please visit our PCERT booth if you have any questions about chapter implementation, training provider registration, or sponsorship opportunities. At this summit, we really want to help you get familiar with professional certification, but we also want to help you improve your open BIM knowledge. And in order to start with that, we've prepared a little self-assessment test for you. So if you can please log in to the Mentimeter by scanning the QR code. Yeah, you can see it here right on the screen. We have 4 questions prepared for you. And the first one is just to log in and see where you think you stand at this moment. Okay, some confidence in the room, I see. Okay, majority thinks they're at the higher level. Okay. Okay, let's go to the first question then. What is IFC? Oh, sorry. Is it an openly documented standard for the exchange of data about built assets and its construction and maintenance? Is it an open and international data standard for BIM? A semantic definition of components in the built asset industry? A set of agreements about entities, types, enumeration, and properties? Or all of the above? Okay, that gives me some confidence. the right answer is indeed all of the above. Okay, next one. Okay, so fill in the dots. BCF is used to communicate an issue, a topic, a change request, or a subject. Okay, so maybe you have overestimated yourself a little bit, because the correct answer is a topic. Okay, let's move on to the next one. What is the incorrect way to require your custom property set with IDS? Okay. That's a bit better. The correct answer is answer B, pset_my_properties. Very nice. Thank you. So, can I go back to my slides, please? So, okay. Did you answer none of the questions correctly? You might want to start with entry. Did you have only 1 or 2 mistakes? You might have sufficient knowledge to do our foundation exam. And did you answer all the answers correctly? You might want to try our Kahoot challenge in the exhibition area, or visit any of the workshops, deep dives, and all the other educational activities that are taking place over the coming days. And that's that. As they say in Czech, Aito.
Thanks, Céline. And yeah, interesting. I'm glad the interaction was there, which is the main thing. So thank you. All right, we'll move to our next presentation. The next presentation from one of our platinum sponsors, Autodesk. We have Angel Velez from Autodesk, and he is a distinguished engineer and product owner, and of course, a very well-known face amongst the buildingSMART community. So he's going to be talking about an open IFC conversation. Over to you, Angel.
Yeah. Good morning and bon dia. And by the way, I'm already taking part of the challenge, being outside of your comfort zone. Here I am. So it does feel good to be in Valencia, home of one of Spain's best art and cultural hubs, where modern architecture meets ancestral traditions. I do want to say a bit about the title of my presentation. It's a bit of a lie. It won't be just about IFC, and mostly I'm just going to be talking at you, not with you. But I hope that you learned something today, and we can start a conversation afterwards, not just about Revit or Autodesk, but really about it as an industry. All right, so what are we going to be talking about today? We're going to go through this presentation right now. We're going to see kind of how we're using Autodesk, IFC today. I'm going to be using Autodesk products mostly because that's what I can get people to give me videos for. And then we'll talk a little bit about what are the challenges that we face today and going into the future. And then maybe some ideas about how we can meet these challenges. And hopefully we can just wrap it up after that and see where we go from there. So if you have your bingo cards out, any Autodesk presentation has to have a safe harbor statement in it. So basically, I'm going to be saying a bunch of stuff up here. It's future facing, so don't go out and buy any products on anything I'm saying. But again, hopefully we'll all learn something. So they say a picture's worth 1,000 words. So here's 5 pictures. So that's 5,000 words for me right here. Basically, 30 years ago, almost today, I graduated with a master's from Stanford after getting a dual major at MIT in computer science and math. So right there, you know, I'm not an architect, I'm a programmer. Really, when I kind of look back at those years, really kind of my hardest subjects in computers were graphics, and in math was geometry. So clearly I was meant to be in a CAD industry in the future. But it's interesting that 1994 was when I graduated, because that was also kind of the year that IFC was born, although it took me a while to get there. 25 years ago, so 5 years after that, I joined a small company called Charles River Software, where we're working on a product which eventually became Revit, and eventually became part of Autodesk. As far as IFC goes, that came 20 years ago for me. Again, not quite to the day, that was later in the year, where I was asked to do like a small project to help out with some work going on in Singapore. I'll get back to that later. And you know, at the time I was thinking, well, this will take a couple months. I wonder what I'll do next. I was a little off on the time there. But as I said before, I'm a distinguished engineer at Autodesk, which is a fancy way of saying that I'm an old computer programmer. Really, the most important thing is I consider myself part of this community, right? So I've been part of the implementer support group since about 2006, and I've been coming to these meetings for a number of years. Obviously, the pandemic stopped a few of them, but really, kind of, this is my second group of coworkers right here. So as I said before, 1994 was kind of a busy year for this community. That's when Autodesk kind of started the Industry Alliance for Interoperability, which became the buildingSMART that we know today. I think this slide more or less speaks for itself. As far as the IC 4.3, of course, it's 2022 was when we kind of started, but as we saw earlier, 2024 is a pretty critical year too for the ISO certification. And the one date that we'll get back to later, which I think is kind of critical, 2006 for IFC 2X3. So IFC 2X3 is now an adult, it's 18 years old. Something to think about when we talk later about kind of where we are and what are our challenges moving forward. All right, so enough of the introduction. Got some movies and I've got some talk about kind of where we are today and kind of what drives our decisions in supporting OpenBIM. So really kind of at Autodesk, we kind of sat down and thought, you know, what drives our decisions about how to support OpenBIM in our products? And we kind of came up with 3 kind of principal guidelines. Not in this particular order. Kind of the most important one really is consistent, right? So if you're bringing data in or you're taking data out, you want to make sure that the data that you get is the data that you expect it to be. And that should be always the case. After that, we want your experience to be performant, right? So we'd like you to be able to get this data or receive it or get it out in a timely fashion. And lastly, we understand that, of course, there's not one size fits all for how your data is going, how you're going to want your data or how you're going to use your data. So we really want to be flexible in allowing you a lot of options for how you want to use that. As far as the performant goes, the consistent goes, one thing we're really focusing on is having one OpenBIM experience at Autodesk. So we're using both internal engines such as the Autodesk translation framework, which is an internal thing that allows us to share our knowledge across our products. And externally, we use the Open Design Alliance software. So that gives us kind of optimized, performant access to tools that, again, allow us to get away from bespoke implementations. Examples of that are when we switch to the ODA, that allows us to really access IFC files of any size. And using the Autodesk translation framework has really improved the quality of the data that we get in. And that's already in Revit 2024.2, where you can see a big difference in the quality of the 3D data. Actually, before I go on to this, I do want to say one other thing. I'll go back. As far as flexibility goes, we know that we still have work to do there, and this has been an area of focus for us in the recent times. But in the meantime, we want to document what we've already done. And we had a very successful IFC manual that we had in PDF format, had a couple of versions, and we've just recently translated that to Gitbook. So unfortunately, there's a slide that I missed here that had a very nice image of it. But the point is that you can now go and, well, we can go and add to it in a granular way. And that granular approach is going to come back later when we think about challenges of the future. So again, I come from the Revit side of the house, but I'm representing all of Autodesk here. And so it isn't just Revit that supports IFC at Autodesk. For IFC 2x3 in particular, we have a lot of support across, not just in our desktop products, but also in our cloud products. That includes not only AEC products, but things like Inventor and the mechanical CAD side. And obviously on the cloud with Autodesk Construction Cloud and BIM 360. As we kind of move forward and we get beyond just IFC 2x3, you see that we have some IFC 4 and 4.3 support, and I'll show a little movie coming up with that 4.3 support in particular. It's important to note also that I can stand up here and say that, you know, we have good IFC, but really it's critical to be able to have independent verification of that. One of the two methods that we'll be talking about today is, of course, the certification program. We're very committed to the certification program. In fact, Revit is the one product, as far as I know, that has every single buildingSMART certification that's ever come out. So that's both IFC 2x3 and IFC 4. And in addition to national certifications, so in Japan, you have the MLIT civil certification, which we have, the MLIT Civil Infrastructure IFC certification from 2022. And we're currently actively working to make sure that we get the building certification from that organization as soon as possible also. In addition, you can see here the CORNET Singapore BCA E-Plan Check certification. Now that certification that I just showed, excuse me for a second, was a 2x2 certification. And in fact, it's interesting because that process was actually got IFC into Revit in the first place back in 2005. That's a long time ago, and they've evolved to CORNET X. And so as they've evolved, so have we, and we have availability to get like add-ins now that support the new CORNET X IFC Singapore requirements. So you can get those at the Autodesk Interoperability Tools website, which is exactly where the IFC manual is also located. All right, I promised some movies. Oh, good, that started. So what we're looking at here is using IFC 4.3. I'm looking at, this is Civil 3D 2022 and Revit 2023. So basically we started in Civil 3D, we created some site and rail, we bring that into Revit. Now this is intended as a reference workflow, right? So Civil 3D is used for what Civil 3D is good for, and Revit's used for what Revit's good for. Here you can see that we have all the properties. So this is not one big blob. These are individual objects properly categorized with the right parameters you'd expect. So what is Revit good for in this situation? Well, one thing is detailed design. So we create a bunch of sections here, and we can go to one of the sections. We can look at the cross-section of the structure, and then we can switch to another section, and we can start tagging the objects, which have the data that came in from Civil 3D. Of course, Revit's not just a documentation tool, it's also a design tool, so we can build a structure based on the Civil 3D data. And then most importantly, we can take both of these together and look at them in another software. And again, now we have the combined federated model of the Revit and the Civil information. And again, you can see that the properties make it through the whole process, the whole workflow here. So neither Civil 3D 2022 nor Revit 2023 shipped with IFC 4.3 support. So how were we able to do that? We're able to do that because we use the same APIs for our OpenBIM support, our IFC support, that anyone else has access to. So you can go to the Autodesk desktop app, and you can download updates for any of this work, including, for example, Civil 3D, as of a few days ago, has the full IFC 4.3 certified version support already down there. You can get it. And for Revit, we've added IFC 4.3. We're not quite on the full yet, but we'll be there soon. I hope so. No promises. And then on the Revit side, not only do we have the kind of IFC updates, but it's also based on open source. So we believe pretty strongly that, not only is it open data, but it's also open source for the open data. So we started this in 2011. We've had it open for 12.5 years and have had hundreds of thousands of downloads. And of course, it also allows other people to make their own modifications, which we see all the time. So it's not just IFC, as I said before. There are other standards, and we're able to use the API to work with partners. So here we see OneStruction. They're actually located in our booth with us, having BSDD support for inside of Revit. So this is a simple tool that supports not just BSDD support, but I don't want to spoil the next slide, and where you can see a workflow where, again, they're augmenting the Revit data with BSDD data. And we only expect BSDD data to become more important in the future. So this becomes important, and we'll want to more and more kind of streamline this and make this part of the experience. So I said not just BSDD, we have IDS also. So again, here's just a little short video where we get external specifications for what the data itself should be like. So not only are we validating the quality of the software creation of data, but also the quality of the data that you're creating in the software. And we can make sure that throughout the system, you have the highest consistency. And again, it's not just Revit, right? So here's the Autodesk Construction Cloud, and we are able to take an external IFC file and mark it up to exchange, was it issues? No, topics. To exchange topics, which we can then export and bring into another system to look at the topics again. So I hope kind of very quickly, we've been able to go through kind of most of the buildingSMART offered open standards in effort. And again, while we were looking at Autodesk products, it's important to understand that, and they're part of a bigger ecosystem, which is the whole point here, right? This is half of the equation. The other half of the equation is whatever you're using. All right, so I think we can say we're done. I think if we leave now, maybe we can get a nice table for 400, get some paella for lunch, although it's a little early for lunch. But no, I think we do have some challenges. Now, again, I'm a developer. These are the challenges from my point of view. I think if we asked everyone in the room what they thought we needed to do next, you'd get a different answer, but this is my humble opinion. So I try to think of what are the issues that we're facing today, and what are the issues we're facing tomorrow. Again, I'm going to go into each of these in some more detail. So really kind of how do we improve the quality of the IFCs that we get? How do we make it easier to get IFC implementations throughout? And then again, tomorrow, how do we think about standards versus innovation? And how do we think about monolithic versus granular data? So, plug for buildingSMART here. I think that, again, it's very easy for anyone to say that their data is good, but it's important to have independent validation of this. And I highly recommend everyone in the room to go out and try out the validation service if you haven't yet. I've seen a lot of files. I've seen files in my time, and of course, the files that I see are the ones that aren't very good. And every time that anyone, including Revit, makes it so that you can bring in a file that has an issue in it, we've effectively extended the standard, right? So now the standard includes circles with no radius or required attributes that don't exist. Because at the end of the day, you have to get your work done. And anytime one of us does it, everyone has to do it. Because, wait a minute, Revit supports this, why don't you? I think the validation service really helps us by nipping that problem, by getting rid of these invalid files in the first place. And then we can really work on supporting the actual standard instead of the standard that keeps growing. And just to be clear, we are using this ourselves. So Civil 3D, as I said, added IFC 4.3 support for Civil 3D 2022 through 2024. And in doing so, they used the validation service to make sure that the files they were creating were indeed clean of problems. And as the validation service improved, by the way, because it is a work in progress, more issues were found, and those were fixed too. So, and I expect that this will be an iterative process over time. I got to keep one ugly slide. This is it. This is from a presentation I gave at Aarhus University in 2016. And I was very excited at the time to be able to use the advanced VREPs in IFC4 Design Transfer View. While we do have advanced VREP support, it doesn't get a lot of use because, of course, we never really finished Design Transfer View. Why is that? Well, I mean, in practice, most of the files we see are actually 2x3 files, the 18-year-old guy. So one of the things that we really want to think about moving forward is, like, how do we improve IFC so that we can more quickly use what we already have today, right? How do we get more products on IFC4 and IFC 4.3 instead of IFC 2x3? Also, we have standardization versus innovation. So again, IFC is really good, 30 years of knowledge on common BIM objects that we've been using over the last 30 years. If you want a standard wall, if you want a load-bearing beam, if you want a washer-dryer, IFC's got you covered. If you want a tunnel or a baggage design system or a baggage handling system, though, you need to form a domain and wait years to get that solved, and then years more for people to implement it. So how do we get that process sped up so that we can quickly innovate? Also, of course, while we can export part of our models, the most common IFC format is a step file. So how do we get away from having to export everything at once and go towards kind of more granular exchanges of data? So I don't have the answers to everything, but I'm going to offer some opinions. So this is the AEC data model vision at Autodesk, and hopefully it looks familiar. So basically, the idea is that we need to move away from just open data, and we really open access to open data is what we're looking for. And it really has to be open, right? The idea is that it doesn't matter who created your data, you want to be able to get it anytime in an open way. And that's where IFC5 comes in, right? So IFC5 really needs to be not just about open data, but it has to be about open access to open data in a granular fashion. So it doesn't matter whether you're an architect, you're a civil engineer, or a structural engineer. If you're looking at a floor slab, you can share that data together. You share what makes sense, like maybe the outline or maybe the base material of it. But overall, you don't have to share information that doesn't matter to you, right? So, you know, an architect doesn't need all of the information a structural engineer needs, and vice versa. All right, so that's a lot, and of course, I always talk slower than I think I'm going to, so I had to rush it a little bit at the end to make sure we stay on time. So what did we learn today? So first of all, I do want to emphasize that open standards do work today. We've seen years and years of projects large, real projects using IFC. So we know that what we have does work. But we still need to think about what's coming next, and that's really what kind of excites me, right? Like, what can we do to take it to the next level? And for me, that's, again, not just open data, but open access to data. So how do we define those open API standards for tomorrow? And how do we get away from files and move towards granular data that, again, is very specific to what you need right now? And furthermore, how do we get away from needing to specify a new version of IFC every time that we want to add a new concept? How do we standardize the data we have now, allow for innovation, and then when that's ready, we standardize that, and we keep going, and we iterate in a much faster way than we are today. And in case anyone's worried, we are going to continue supporting all IFC today. For import, we support from IFC 2x, and for export, we support IFC 2x2. So we're not getting rid of that, but we want to make sure, again, that we have those for old files, and we can move towards the future for new things. So I promised that this was the start of a conversation. Basically, look for us this week, talk to us. Anything I said on here that you want to hear more about, anything you disagree with, anything you agree with, find us at our booth. And there's a QR code there. If you can't find us for any reason, you can scan that in and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. So, gracias, and thank you for listening.
Thanks, Angel, and thanks for going out of your comfort zone. So there's at least one person here who's gone out of their comfort zone today. And also, I think, really nice segue from what we saw from strategic projects that Clive presented and how we're seeing the support from the software vendors in validation service, BSDD, ISC5, and those types of things. So I think that's really good. Right, we come to our final presentation for this session. I'd like to welcome, of course, earlier announced joining the Strategic Advisory Council. We'd like to welcome Ratnakar Garikipati, who is the CEO of LeapThought, and he will be providing a presentation from his perspective. So, Ratnakar, over to you, please.
Thanks, Adrian.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. First time here in Valencia. I think we made some friends. We've had a look at the Lifecycle, the festival. The city is great. We love it. So I'm Ratnakar. I'm the CEO and founder of LeapThought. I'm also the chair. We have a vice chair and a bunch of people here of our booths right outside. So please stop by and say hello. So today I wanted to talk about basically some of the advancements that we've driven on the back of the open standards and the innovation that the buildingSMART's been doing for a number of years. We actually pledged our allegiance to open standards in about, I think, 2014. I come from a software background. I built products. I was in the systems integration space for a very long time before forming LeapThought. We do actually have a nice blended R&D team of architects, some of whom are scholars, civil engineers, structural engineers, as well as software engineers that actually come together to do our R&D. So today what I'm going to talk about is basically a higher order kind of a position that we take at LeapThought about environment and sustainability. But obviously, when we go talk to our enterprise clients, like Singapore's Land Transport Authority, or Singapore's Building and Construction Authority that have just gone live with Konetex, which is powered by a platform, they think it's a bit too far-fetched. So we do have to basically translate that into what is now here and now that we have to do. And then break that down into a journey and get them onto that journey and then help them realize, holy cow, we are not too far from, I think, where we need to be. So the title of the session here is Cradle to Cradle. I'm sure all of you are from the industry. You know what this means. It's about circularity. It's about reuse, repurpose. But how do you get there? And what are the challenges that actually sort of impede progress towards this, in my view? right? This is basically my perspective that I wanted to share with you. And also link this back to some of the investments that we do at LeapThought from an R&D standpoint. So I hope that through the examples that I share, you'll be able to connect to what we've actually achieved, and then perhaps join us in helping us actually collaborate and innovate further and faster. So hence we are here, and hence we've actually signed up for the buildingSMART to be a strategic kind of a partner, to not just actually be the benefactor, but also to contribute. So let's look at the challenges, right? I mean, you have data. So what we've seen basically is that organizations tend to actually procure these CDEs for an individual project. It's often used by individuals or teams, and often provisioned for a project, and that gets taken down. You always actually see that leads to the challenges relating to the operational aspects of the infrastructure or the buildings that are actually commissioned, because a lot of data is not available anymore. And also the economic, and policy changes, the regulatory changes and all those, they constantly evolve. So for an organization that actually has a portfolio of construction projects, what does it really mean in terms of how they overcome these challenges? So I'll talk to some of that by way of a journey in terms of how I think the foundation would look like and what we've done for some of our clients. The role of AI and machine learning, and how you basically get the machine into the trenches of the data to be able to actually create a bit of a storyline for your built environment, right? For your one project, many projects, and everything that the organizations do. I mean, obviously I'm here talking about the asset owners and operators, because I believe that by mobilizing the asset owners and operators and the regulatory authorities, it will mobilize the industry. The work that we do will be looking at basically driving change, in a more standardized and repeatable manner, as opposed to actually start to innovate within the projects. So the digital backbone, I mean, the significance and the role of the open data and also the standards and how that can actually democratize the innovation. Once you lay the foundation, what does basically the continuous innovation look like? And we see a lot of brain drain in the industry. I mean, a lot of colleagues at LeapThought actively do work with a number of universities to sort of share what we do on the real world projects that we have, and then excite and inspire them so that they can think that the industry is still sexy enough. So there's a call to action, and then I'll conclude with the final slides. So I think I talked about the data, right? So when we think of each individual project, while we might actually do justice to the delivery of the project to an extent, we do not actually realize the full benefit, in terms of repeatability and standardization and so on and so forth. So I believe we need to actually look at what does the open standards bedrock by way of a foundation looks like. The knowledge capture is often limited. The data is static in a dynamic world. But then again, basically, how do we then infuse all the ancillary stuff that actually happens with regards to what's in the BIM models so that we enrich the footprint, the digital footprint, to make sure basically there's a storytelling in the sense that if a material was chosen with some specific analysis that was performed, how do you actually link that analysis and the decision making around that material, the use of the material, along with what's in the BIM model, so that when it actually, when you're decommissioning that building after the fact that the project teams no longer are available, you still have the information to be able to actually know that the materials that are in the building can be salvaged. So there are many, many use cases that we can think of by actually laying the right foundation that actually can unlock the circularity. So in terms of the integrated digital delivery as a platform, what you can think of is you have the BIM models in the form of IFC that are actually getting submitted into the platform. But then again, during design, you have complex analysis. You have basically reviewers and approvals. A lot of information about the material that actually is generated and created by people that collaborate on the information that gets shared. Now, IFC in itself is a BIM model, but there's a whole bunch of things that actually happen when people come together to collaborate on IFC. Where do you store that data? Being able to have basically a chronology and traceability of why certain decisions were made and who made those decisions and who are the parties that are involved basically gives you the story that you would need so that the intent of what and why something is designed is carried forward to basically something being manufactured with integration into a vertical supply chain from a production point of view, with additional data coming back and getting attached to your BIM models, and then following through to the construction, including your digital inspections and so on and so forth on site, and forming the basis for an effective kind of a handover. So I'll give you an example of Singapore Land Transport Authority. They actually had two new rail lines worth about $60 billion, made up of 150 design and build contracts. And I think they have internal, teams of about 60 to 70 divisions that actually get involved in across all the life cycle of each and every contract that they have, making up of two rail lines. So what does it really mean? Standardizing them in terms of how their internal 50 or 60 divisions need to collaborate, how they actually interoperate with the external ecosystem made up of 150 design and build contracts across the life cycle, from design through to basically the construction and all the way through to asset handover. What we do is, when we receive the BIM models through submissions across design or construction, we open up, we infuse the data into a smart data hub, we index the data, and then basically surface that up into the browsers of users so that they can federate the IFC models in the browser, along with all the ancillary information for them to be able to analyze it, perform computations, and then hook in basically additional things that they need to do to retain and sustain the context through the life cycle. When they do that across 150 contracts, it gives them the repeatability, it gives them the standardization, it gives them the compliance, but at the same time, it gives them the intelligence about what they need to do when it comes to refurbishing and renewing and so on. So for us, it's about basically infusing intelligence and complementing the open standards across a portfolio of construction projects in a smart platform is, I think, where you tend to see the benefits. I mean, here's an example of some of the things we do with IFC for Singapore's Building and Construction Authority. Our platform is powering the collaboration amongst 8 regulatory agencies and also providing basically the automation from a model checking point of view. All the industry submissions for any projects over 5,000 square meters has got to be in IFC. It's mandated. And this was soft launched about, I think, 1 month ago. To date, I think there have been about 14 different large property developers that have been invited to actually come in and collaborate. And the workflow goes like this. The industry submits. So they'll be submitting basically individual IFC files for structural architecture, MEP, and so on. The submission comes into the platform. It gets routed to 8 agencies and their internal divisions. And then by the time that the submission reaches the internal divisions, the machine would have intervened and then created basically all these things. From an environment point of view, some of the examples that I'm showing here is basically the concrete use index, the PPVC calculations. It's actually doing various computations. There's also basically the fire escape paths, some of the structural checking. Their regulatory chapters are quite well defined, but they're still basically quite subjective. So we work with the professional engineers, we work with basically the authorities in making sure that we remove the ambiguity that's there in terms of the interpretation of the legislation, and then we translate that into algorithms which our machine basically kicks in to actually check. And then what it does is it brings back the results by way of evidences to the 8 agencies so that they're actually complemented by the machine by saying, hey, your models have failed these checks. Then they coordinate, create BCF issues, and the BCF issues basically get pushed into the letters that get officially generated by the regulatory platform and then sent back to the industry. The industry then resubmits. When the resubmissions come, we actually do a model compare. We generate a differential between basically the original submission and the resubmissions, and then further actually do the automated checking again to make sure that the issues that were identified before are resolved, right? So there's a chronology, there's a traceability here, and the IFC is complemented by the fact that there's all this additional information related to various analysis and design checks and so on and so forth that are performed on the models so that when the submissions are approved, when it's ready for the built environment for construction, there's basically a traceability. So 20 years later, if the building were to be taken down or if it were to be refurbished, they do have the information for them to be able to compare and actually make choices about what they need to do, whether to give permissions, what material can be salvaged, what can be refurbished, what can be, repurposed, and so on and so forth. So where I was getting to this is basically being able to have all this intelligence coupled with open standards in a platform that actually tells you a story from cradle to cradle, right? If you actually make careful design choices about environmentally sustainable material, complemented by the intelligence that you keep within your platforms beyond people that come and go, across projects and beyond, you can make informed decisions when it comes to repurposing things. We should stop thinking basically implementing CDEs for individual projects. I think all the asset owners and operators, the regulatory authorities need to think about platforms that actually are open, accessible from a data point of view, which comes back to what Angel was saying earlier, with intelligence basically that can be infused, not just by software provided by LeapThought, but can be anything. I mean, you all actually innovate and do great work with open standards. What you do should be, brought into platforms like this to further enhance. I mean, we work with structural NUS in Singapore who've done actually some smarts around structural checking. So it's about infusing what they've done, right, for the industry into the platform to complement the data that's coming into the platform. So, I mean, fast forward 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years from now, all of Singapore's built environment data is going to be in the platform with a lot of intelligence for them to actually make smarter choices down the lane. So yeah, I think there'll be a panel discussion, I think tomorrow, day after tomorrow, that talks to some of what I've shared in much more detail in terms of the journeys that our clients been on, and how they've actually realized the foundations that they've laid today, which is going to drive the continuous improvement and innovation by augmenting some of the great work that's being done by others in the room like yourselves. So we're actually calling the knowledge leaders, the universities, research institutes, and associations to come and join us. We actively collaborate with a number of universities. Stanford, SciFi, we were there at the board meeting recently. We'll take an active role with Stanford in doing some of our innovation. We have about 6 universities in Singapore that we actively provide courseware for. We actually do guest lectures, we augment their staff, and we provide internships and so on and so forth. University of Washington in Seattle, Washington State University, and many more to come. So please come join us and help us progress what we do. We also actually work with a number of systems integrators, ISVs. We also welcome those that are in the room to join us. In terms of the industry champions, we also want to hear basically some use cases and complex kind of challenges that are faced by the regulatory authorities as well as asset owners and operators. We do have clients that are always willing to actually collaborate with others that are willing to make progress in this space. So, you know, anybody here that you think, you know, would want a site visit or to be able to actually look at what we're doing in Singapore, please tell us. Our booth's right opposite. So we look forward to basically sharing what we've been doing and also learning from you to see how we can actually progress and contribute to the great work that the buildingSMART's doing. So thanks very much. We look forward to interacting with each of you guys. And yeah, Adrian.
Thanks, Ratnakar. Very interesting, and certainly heard a lot about this Singapore Coronet X, and certainly we'll be hearing a bit more about YIFC later. So that is a wrap for the first part of the day. Thank you all very much. We're going to fix the O. Thank you for those that have let me know that is has dropped down. We may give up on that at some point. I'm not sure, but anyway. One thing, we do get a lot of questions around the photos. Henry, our photographer, who will be, he's over there. Hi, Henry. Actually, booking Henry is the hardest job of all of our events, so we're glad when he can make it. But he said that we'll put a lot of the photographs up on a shared box file, so you'll be able to get access to those as soon as we can. With that, we'll have a short break for 30 minutes. We'll reconvene here at 11:30. Please go and make use of the teas and coffees, and we look forward to seeing you at the next session. Thank you all very much.